Oh, I say, the old chums and chumettes. Fancy a spot of tea? Because as you may have seen, Cadillac and Ford have been busy spilling their pots of tea. Although, truth be told, I'm not really a tea drinker, I'm more of a coffee guy anyway, proper millennial. But jokes aside, it was kind of inevitable. Cadillac and Ford are both trying to prove that they are the serious American player in the F1 room. But wait, what about Haas? What are they, chopped liver to you? And that tension has come to a head when Cadillac's F1 project CEO Dan Tauris made a pointed remark followed by a more measured response from Ford's Mark Rushbrook. But there are a good couple of recent examples since 2026 began of both Ford and Cadillac going, Me, I'm the more devoted F1 player! Anyway, here they are, for your consideration. Let's begin with Dan. Ahem. It's not even close, the commitment to F1 of Ford. Ford is a marketing deal with very minimal impact, while General Motors is an equity owner in the Cadillac team. They're deeply embedded from an engineering standpoint, and they were involved from day one. Those two deals couldn't be more different. Now, it's Mark's turn. People will have their opinions, but if they saw what was going on, if we were able to open the doors and show everything to them, I think they would be convinced very quickly. It's not simply a marketing program. Of course there is that element, but we're in there with our sleeves pulled up. We're doing it together with Red Bull, but it's still a massive challenge, just in terms of the technical challenge and at the pace at which we need to move. Coming into one of the hottest motorsporting tickets going right now, Formula One, and saying that they believe that they will be fitting right in, and answering a very big concern of many of us fans, thinking that they're just cashing in on the American hype, and no, they are focusing around one word: commitment. For Cadillac, commitment means having skin in the game, because they took up Andretti's initial forays to build a new F1 team from scratch, and then will make their own engines come 2029. Ford, they're just work buddies with Red Bull. Us, we're proper constructors right here. Although, as I touched upon recently, that could easily change if Ferrari needs Cadillac as an influential ally in terms of engine politics should Haas get into bed with Toyota. You can check out that video right here. And to be fair, they'll probably be poking at the last time Ford was involved with a Formula One team. Funnily enough, the team that Red Bull bought for about £1 back in 2004. But anyway, Ford has a different definition for the word commitment. Theirs comes through deep engineering works with Red Bull Ford powertrains, and as I've pointed out in multiple videos, Max Verstappen at the helm, as well as them, have realised that the scope of the amount of work they've been undertaking with the team has absolutely expanded since the deal was first announced in 2023. At first, it was going to be centred around battery and electrical operations. Well, I mean, that was where the hockey puck was going, just going full EV. Now, though, they've realised, to their own surprise and astonishment, they're doing more stuff about the internal combustion side of things, too. They're mildly frustrated that they're so keen to show us all that they mean business, that they have been sticking themselves in with the Red Bull engineers and going full ham on this, but due to pesky red tape and NDAs and bureaucracy and, sensitive information, they possibly just cannot do that. Their hands are tied. And to be fair to Ford, and not so fair to General Motors, at least they have some sort of power unit ready to go to actually show off their credentials, instead of Cadillac maybe just saying, well, think about it in 3 years. But then again, Ferrari might actually be a better ticket after all, but that's besides the point. But there is more we can glean from this if we put the two of them together. Cadillac's selling legitimacy and ownership, whilst Ford is defending its technical credibility, and for good reason, because being labelled just marketing can poison recruitment and make it harder to justify long-term costs in F1 if you're just riding the waves of a gimmick, which, as we all know too well, can easily approach 9 or even 10 figures over time. So therefore, what Mark said in response to what Dan has said is that, hey, this Formula One business is a lot of hard work, so you know. Work with a team that is absolutely ruthlessly competitive and becoming competent, especially on the engineering side with Laura Mecki's in charge, and they're more than happy to be rolling along with the punches, especially now with Max Verstappen taking a really close look at the operation and saying for himself, ideally in that really big Blick interview from the other day, that he would like to see out his remaining time through Formula One with Red Bull. He doesn't see himself moving anywhere else, at least right now. So at least that might imply that whatever's going on at Ford and behind the scenes and the operations there, Max is having a good time. And this could easily go so far into the technical side, the engineering side, the stuff that classic Formula fans would actually get a kick out of. Cadillac at the moment could easily just pull the brakes and go, hey, relax with the new kids, take it easy, stop punching down. which may explain why Dan Towers is talking about, well, we own the entire thing. They have to sound more serious to make us take them seriously. Because even though the Andretti project is something I've actually quite liked throughout its inception in 2023, there are still plenty of question marks for us. And let's not forget, Ford has shown themselves to make some pretty good Formula One engines. Let's not forget the Cosworth DFV, one of the most enduring power units of the entire age of Formula One. So maybe Ford can just afford to be a little bit less theatrical and instead be a little bit more practical, as in big cars going fast with Max behind the wheel. A little bit of a chalk and cheese situation. GM's going it alone with some initial Ferrari hand-holding, whilst Ford's going with the close partner without owning approach. Sort of like what Toyota's trying to do over at Haas, in broadening their technical support and understanding of F1 without actually being a full-fat constructor. The only difference here, though, is that Ford's been brave enough to actually put their name on the building, unlike Toyota. Although they are getting closer with the whole TGR shtick. And Mr. Rushbrook has been quite keen that what they are doing with Red Bull is just part and parcel of what they do in other motorsporting series. And for those of you who are new to Formula One and motorsporting in general, all this stuff going on between Ford and General Motors, it's nothing new. It's been going on for so long, several decades, almost 100 years, and also in different motorsporting categories. Australian supercars, to name but one, where Holden, which is the Australian arm of General Motors, has been effectively reigning supreme over there. But it's not like Ford's been in the doldrums over there. They have won there too. And they've actually pulled off a little bit of a coup with the 888 team, in moving them from General Motors over to Ford Power, and using a recent video to showcase that car with Max Verstappen at the wheel. So even more hype with that kind of a guy. And I will be bringing up that Ford Max video later in the video because it's a very important point in this plot. Then of course there's a debate about which muscle car is better, a Chevy or a Mustang. And let's not forget NASCAR, because there are Chevys and Fords in there as well, even though admittedly Chevrolet has been the far more successful brand out there, with Ford a very distant second. So, yes, General Motors is being quite punchy because it has dominated in those disciplines, and it will believe that in the not-too-distant future, as both endeavours start to gain some progress with their respective operations, that they too will be at the top and Ford will not. And that's led to a bit of a standoff, as in these two parties are circling around one another, Western style, as to figuring out how to crack the egg that is Formula One. Both automakers are trying to gauge which approach will be the most appealing across the most amount of Formula One fans, and already I can start to see two different approaches from these corporations. One of them is going down the human route, one of them is going down the nerdy car guy route. And it might give you an idea about what kind of F1 politics these two teams will be working with going into the pre-season testing arc, and maybe the first couple of rounds including Melbourne. For example, that Hot Wings video. Valtteri Bottas and Checo being on first three feasts, and then of course there was that Red Bull Ford showcase of fast cars through time. Chalk and cheese. Now I know you might be thinking, come off it, Law, you can't be just using those two videos to completely define a brand campaign for two big juggernauts of the automotive industry. I'm sorry, yes I can. Because the way they've been going about this, this is very much them giving the tea and spilling it all over for us all to just go, who is going to join their side in the Netflix era of Formula One? The Checo Bottas appearance on the First Three Feast YouTube channel, a place which graced the likes of Lewis Hamilton a while back, is a classic broad reach move for Cadillac to undertake. By pitting these two against one another in a food-based challenge, it sells their personalities, gets these two drivers back into the algorithm after taking last year off in terms of racing, and as an attempt to make the sport feel a little bit more approachable. But this is definitely being served up for the casual fans and for people that only watch the highlight reels of races, not the full widget, and of course the ones that are simply there for the memes. And trust me, both Checo and Valtteri have plenty of memes attached to them. It's all about the aura, baby. Nothing really much to do with the technical side of things. It's all about selling the people, the characters of the story that is Formula One. Now, I know that for some of you, this might be horrible. I don't want this in my sport. Well, I'm sorry. This is the way Formula One is right now. You just gotta roll with it. But I will hand it to Cadillac. It's definitely a smart way to go. It's just not one that I watched the whole way through because, well, I just felt like it was a tiny little bit forced, but I could still see that those two definitely got on as people, but it's nothing like what Ford got up to with their latest video, right off of the back of the really successful video that Max Verstappen did with the former Top Gear host Chris Harris. That is a seminal video and really sets the tone about what Max expects to do, at least when he's not in a Formula One car. As in, have plenty of fun in fast Fords. This time he was with the new boy Arvid Lindblad, testing out a range of classic and modern racing Fords. A very different kind of signal to what Cadillac did. You know, mixing heritage and power and speed! This is definitely countering what Mr. Tower has said about this just being a marketing campaign, as in saying, no. Ford has racing DNA here and we're more than happy to show it with two Formula One drivers right here, just pounding it around a track. And if you look at the whole video, with a surprising result at the end. And with them chartering 100 years of cars, it might be signalling what's to come with the beginning of this particular relationship with Verstappen at the helm. Which is kind of comforting considering that 2026 is a very big regulations cliff. So right there, you've got two very opposing forces at work to try and win the hearts of many. We have got chickens versus chicanes. Oh, I'm so proud of that one. And if you're waiting for me to tell you which approach is right and which approach is wrong, I hate to break it to you, there is no wrong answer. Both practices are correct in their own way. Having two returning races with huge followings worldwide suffering through a very well-known leveler, hot wings, and of course being dropped by the respective teams, is showing a little bit of legitimate human misery and compassion, bringing down to earth two important figures who not that long ago in the Eccleston era would have been very mysterious figures and not many people would have known much about it. Meanwhile, we get to live out some fantasies of Max testing out different types of racing cars, such as a Ford rally car, as well as the latest Australian supercar, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Pure motorsporting theatre and what-ifery. And also, I think this would stand to benefit the likes of Arvid. Not many people know much about him, but his selections of cars in that video would surprise many, as in, really? You picked those cars which are far older than you actually are, but his choices definitely surprised me. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets a Christmas card from classic Ford racing clubs across the world. But there is one important thing to note here, and this is definitely valid for classic and traditional Formula One fans, is that none of this will determine exact lap time in 2026. This is all about perception and optics and generating hype and fandoms and conviction in their own respective operations. Because we've been really doubting getting the foams out for how potent Ford will be in this partnership. And we've also been quite happy to see the Cadillac Andretti bid actually make it through to see the light of day. But we still don't know how effective that Ferrari engine will be. And considering we've heard plenty of headlines saying that Ferrari is facing a really big challenge right now, that doesn't bode well for any of their customers, including Haas. But the TLDW here is that Cadillac's playing the we're lovable card, whilst Red Bull Ford is playing the we're serious card. But that isn't to say that Ford's going to be playing the stern card every single waking moment, because they did have one ace up their sleeve within that same video before we head towards the launch event, actually today. Well, later today in America. I'm going to get up early for it, but, you know, I'll make a summary video. How about that? And what exactly did Ford do? Well, they broke out that guy. Because suddenly, out of nowhere, we got a, "You all right, fellas? It's Daniel Ricardo here, mate, and just have a little bit of a light on Mac. Go!" But don't worry, folks, the vibes are real. Right there, we saw the return of a Drive to Survive icon. His partnership with Ford and his Enchanté clothing line is a clever move. It broadens Ford's appeal and blending personality with motorsport cred in a way that does feel natural, especially when you see Daniel and Max having a bit of a cheeky laugh with one another. But it does feel weird though, given the awkward conclusion to his time with Red Bull Racing over at V-Car. But he does pop up in the video, there seems to be no hard feelings, and this is on the Red Bull YouTube channel, only this time he's repping Ford Clubber and still having cheeky banter with Max. Because put simply, this was an absolute masterstroke, because, you know, chewing over some hot wings, that's really cute, but what Ford did was have their cake and eat it, as in bring in the hardcore motorsport fans who really back Ford, and then also bring in a guy who basically became the defining main character of that Netflix dominating show. Because Daniel gives us a perfect blend between serious and fun, as in he has won several races in Formula One and had a very long career, definitely repping himself with one of the best teams on the grid. And not to mention, we've seen his cheeky side. He is a live wire in Formula One, and now that he's basically free to his own devices and now wearing a Ford cap, he can even be more madcap, as well as get to drive some really cool cars really, really fast and really, really well, competently. So him doing this partnership with Red Bull and Ford with this post-racing apparel operation, it's a direct pipeline to casual fans and audiences who love the human element of Formula One as well as the cultural one. So definitely expect him to be in more Ford videos and maybe a couple of Red Bull videos as Max is right there. This was a bit of testing of the waters, and safe to say, the discourse I've seen online have been pointing to the exact moment of Daniel showing up and having some chatter with Arvid, as well as having some moments with Max. The return of Maxiel, that partnership, that bromance, and happening in a way that wasn't awkward at all. It being an organic way to rebuild old Red Bull ties as well, especially with brand new management, because let's be real, the manner of his departure from that organisation after being promised so much after taking him in from the cold with McLaren, yeah, that was not a good way to go. Nobody liked that, but maybe, give it time, with Ford behind them, this might actually have a quite sweet ending. Because seeing Ricardo pop up alongside Max, it restored a massively popular fan dynamic without needing Ford to manufacture a new one from scratch. And I'm not gonna lie, whilst I watched the whole video, unlike the Hot Wings video, I did skip first to Daniel's arrival to see what it looked like, and quite frankly, I think they nailed it, Ford. So in my opinion, Ford is trying to win the authentic engineering argument in the long term, they're with Red Bull through 2030, but right here, right now, they are very much blending that as well as playing a very modern game of trying to retain attention. You may not know this, but I am a lover of the Car Wow YouTube channel, and one of their defining video formats is indeed the drag race. Everybody loves a drag race. Seeing a car go fast in a straight line, especially in America where there are plenty of straight lines, it does have mass appeal. And we got to see some of that with the drag race, we got to see some cars, Fords going around fast corners, and then in comes Daniel with his cheeky smile, offering his own little two-penneth and having some banter, and then of course raising the flag and making some little internal commentaries. All the while, he can help sell the belief that Americana is well and truly alive, and as well promote his own clothes line, because even though Enchante is there, I must admit it is part of a little bit of a trend where even though the quality looks good, there isn't really that much design except for a little logo. This, though, feels a little bit more impactful. And all of this is tying into what Mark Rushbrook was saying against the likes of Cadillac, saying that the Ford thing is more than simply marketing, because yes, it is simple marketing, it definitely appealed, but it also did trigger some real fascination in watching all of these cars go really fast. And again, Lindblad's choices were really pleasing to me and very satisfying, especially me being a bit of a lover of an old cozzer. One thing is for sure, it did not look staged. It looked so much fun. For Mr. Towers, though, because he's tied to the Cadillac project at an ownership level, he naturally has to emphasize commitment for those who care about the financials. It does help Mr. Rushbrook from Ford that he isn't in charge of the entire team, Mr. Mekis is. And since Cadillac's new to Formula One, they have to show their credibility on the ground floor. Right now, Ford's team can point to something you can feel in the fandom right now, and they came out swinging and left us thinking, oh, that was a clever move. I can easily imagine that the Cadillac public relations team are really seething right now, as in what Ford did just then and the reception it got. I believe it got over 1 million views in 14 hours, that video. They want to easily clap back, but right now, start getting out there on the track and producing some results and showing good reliability, instead of just relying solely on the people side of things. They need to ideally put Valtteri and Sergio in some classic General Motors cars and try and do something similar authentically, whilst also not looking like they are copying things. I think they probably would get a similar effect if they just let Valtteri loose with a smartphone and make some commentaries about some of Cadillac's brand new cars. And the likes of Checo, all he has to do is just stand next to a particular product and go, so the next thing that Cadillac should do is just start moving through all the checkpoints that their brand new team has to go through. There are plenty of those, such as just getting through their first race, get their first points, get into Q3 for the first time, and every single time they do, it'll show that they are getting one step closer towards being a very solid force in the sport that will get many nods of approval. And with F1 at the peak of its power and influence, if Cadillac does a good job this first season, they can actually aspire for even bigger progress. So even though they might have lost the initial battle before the preseason begins and the launch season starts, let's not forget they do have an ace up their sleeve of their own concerning the likes of one Keanu Reeves. Remember that docuseries that was greenlit and we saw a little bit of a trailer and Keanu Reeves just going, "We've been expecting you." I remember watching that and going, this was great! I can't wait to see this! We will unfortunately have to wait because there is no confirmed release date. Most likely it will happen at the end of 2026 when things are less sensitive regarding stuff that we actually see in front of the cameras and we can actually reflect back. Something to fill in our time during the off-season between now and next year. But this could be Cadillac's response to Ford's Ricardo-powered charm, showcasing the F1 build from the beginning, like Reeves was able to showcase the arrival of Brawn GP and it receiving universal acclaim. And they could be able to show things that Mr. Rushbrook admitted they simply cannot do. They cannot show what's going on behind the curtain, whereas Cadillac might be a little bit more inclined. And it does help immensely that Mr. Anderson comes off as sincere and curious and certainly no rando with little interest in the sport, only there to be some kind of glossy figurehead for casuals. Yeah. No, he's the guy. He's definitely the guy. He knows his wheel. He wants to learn more wheel. He's really invested in this story. So I can easily imagine this docuseries is going to be a hit. If it's even a fraction as charming as the Brawn GP series, I've watched it through like 3 times now. But it all depends on the editing, because if it just looks like a glossy ad, it's going to totally backfire. It's not going to look authentic at all. But if it does nail it, this could easily be the calling card to show us all that, yeah, Cadillac and General Motors, they belong in Formula One. Oh yeah, and another sign of commitment that was mentioned by team principal Graham Loudon is to do with the financial side of things, them claiming that at some points they've been spending more than $20 million a month in preparation for Formula One, spending about $7 million at one point on software and computer systems. That does sound very impressive to you and I, but at the same time, it's not really that relatable, especially in this day and age, talking about spending lots and lots of money. And as recent history has shown, again, Toyota's first phase, yeah, you can have all the money in the world and plow it into your project, but if you just simply don't get Formula One and you choose not to, instead of just sticking across your own way of doing things and think that will work, you will easily find yourself in a hiding to nowhere. So, best of luck, Toyota, for your second go-around. So, in the end, this is just 2 big, long-lasting rivals trying to find their feet in Formula One and prove to us all that they are committed to the sport, that they really mean business. They're not here to just milk the teat of Formula One in America. Because there are plenty of us just going, are these American teams really serious about being in Formula One? Are Americans serious about Formula One? Cadillac saying that commitment means ownership and the bruised knuckles that come from building a team from scratch, whereas Ford says commitment means rolling up your sleeves and getting on with the technical side of stuff, whilst also understanding that, yeah, modern fandom does run on personality and culture. Both of them trying to win the same prize for us all, believing in them. And as we've seen with Audi Shakedown, belief can kickstart a campaign in ways that glitzy show cars and a promise simply can't. Although admittedly, Cadillac's test livery does look pretty cool, and it's quite wholesome with that little name tribute on the nose cone, I'll give them that. So as far as I'm concerned, let them cook. This is really, really fun to see. I'm expecting plenty of tea with these 2 teams as they start to go racing, and no longer having to rely on simply heritage and promises and hype. Because the thing that will really matter is what goes down in Q1 at the first round in Australia. That will be the point when we know about their aspirations, their goals, how they've been able to achieve things, because preseason testing will be a thing, but there are so many variables going on here, we cannot get a definite article as to what will be the hierarchy of Formula One at that time. We'll have to wait for the races. And it certainly helps to add to the ambiguity since all of the existing teams will be going in the unknown as well. So, quite frankly, I don't mind Cadillac and Ford doing this at all because this is the right time to do it, right before we going racing and right at the point when we're all starving for Formula One content, right at the cusp of launch season beginning. I think this has all been an absolute coup. I think what Ford's doing is something that really tickles my fancy more, and I want to see more of it. Both teams trying to make millions and millions of Americans believe that Formula One is worth watching with these 2 titans of their country, as well as making us European fans and international fans alike think that, hey, they're Americans, sure, but they really want to do well in the sport. I believe that Ford is committed to Red Bull, and I believe that Cadillac is just as committed as Andretti were in making sure that their expression of interest actually comes good. I seriously do think that both teams will hit the ground running and certainly show a lot of application and devotion to Formula One. This is not the case of them just wanting to make a quick buck. Because seriously, you can't make a quick buck in Formula One. It'll have to be a very, very long buck because you have to plow in a lot of bucks to begin with. And I think ultimately the winner will be whoever can mix engineering and ego and entertainment into one glorious whole. So right now, I'll leave it to you. What do you think in the comments? And you can decide if my balance of entertainment, ego, and engineering might be suitable in this video right here. that I think you will really like. So allow me to refill my tea, and I'll see you over there.